I'm Tracey. I am, as you can see, a bigger person. Currently I weigh around 180 kilos. At my heaviest I was around 260 kilos. I gained weight through a series of sort of personal circumstances, but the truth is now, and I'm 53, I work full time, I manage my home, I used to have a social life before the pandemic. My life is very ordinary. I'm a very ordinary person, and the only time anything becomes complicated is when I'm accessing healthcare. So I'm a productive member of society, you know, I pay taxes, I work hard, I'm a daughter, a mother, a sister, all of these things. But when we access bigger people, when we access healthcare, life becomes complicated. And I'm passionate about the chance to speak out about that, to raise awareness of clinical staff, of everybody involved in taking care of people. It's a human rights issue, it's an anti-discrimination issue, but also, you know, we're valuable people. We are everybody's mums and sisters and daughters and brothers and uncles, and we deserve respect, and we deserve the very best care that we can get, just like everybody else. So I'm very passionate about speaking out about it, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity. So thank you. The main issue that occurs really is concerns about how my size will make the care I receive different. So will the staff be prepared? Will the plans be in place? Will the equipment be in place? As a larger person, you're very sort of aware of the difficulties that you can cause, and of the extra burden you can place on staff. And there's also the question of my safety. You know, I don't want to hurt myself or damage myself while receiving care. So there's a lot of concerns around those kind of issues prior to admission, and even during the process while you're in hospital, as your care progresses, as your health hopefully improves, how it's all going to be managed going forward. My most recent admission was during the global pandemic. It was an emergency admission, and the staff, staff are always busy, but they were under incredible pressure, and I didn't feel there was an awful lot of communication about how they were planning to care for me, and that created quite a lot of anxiety. I was conscious behind the scenes of you know, whether I was increasing workload and whether I was causing difficulties. Previous admissions, although it was another emergency admit, but I was left on a hospital trolley, a bariatric trolley, but I was left on the trolley for 17 hours while they tried to source a bed for me. When I was actually taken to the ward, when I was told I was staying in, I was actually wheeled onto a ward on the bariatric trolley and just parked in the middle of the ward, and the staff said, well, you can't get into that bed, but there was no other bed available. So I was literally just parked in the middle of the ward, and people were walking around me for quite a few hours really, until, you know, the bed arrived and the existing bed was removed and etc. And that's quite humiliating. You do feel very conspicuous, and you're very aware that you're kind of the centre of attention and curiosity for everybody else, both, you know, patients, staff, visitors to the ward. It's quite a strange experience really, and not one I'd recommend. If the staff had been a little more discreet, if they'd explained, even if they put me in a cubicle and pulled the curtains around me so nobody else knew, that would have been more helpful. But generally I think communication is always something we can all strive to do better, and I think communication about care is vital for helping your patient feel confident in the situation. Overall, the care I received was excellent, but I did feel at times staff didn't really have the time to consider my actual personal needs. I was fit, active and busy before I was admitted. I work full time, manage my house, my garden, so my mobility and flexibility were thankfully probably better than staff might have assumed just from looking at me in a hospital bed or at what my weight was. I did catch comments during shift changeover, etc., as a group of staff walked past. I heard more than once people ask out loud, "Is she mobile?" Which I accept it's important information, it needs to be communicated, but I didn't feel it was very discreet. And I also felt that when the staff were told, yes, Tracey's completely mobile, she can deal with her hygiene needs, etc., there was almost an element of surprise. And obviously I'm sensitive to watching that conversation happen, but it's slightly dispiriting when it happens repeatedly at shift change. And again, I accept the staff were incredibly busy and they were doing their best, but just small incidents like that can have a big impact on how you feel about your healthcare and your recovery. I'm fit and well. I can self-advocate very well. I can, I think I'm articulate and I'm quite determined and I can speak up for myself. When I'm ill, and it was an acute hospital admission, it was an emergency, I was very, very poorly, I'm not in a position to advocate for myself very well. I think larger people have a fear of making themselves appear difficult by asking questions. Some people have an assumption that being bigger is a self-inflicted condition, and to a degree it is, but only in the same way that maybe, our lifestyle choices lead all of us down certain paths, and smokers, drinkers, people who drive recklessly and have car accidents, we all have factors that contribute to our own problems. But I worry about making a fuss, and I worry that people see my condition not as the lady with appendicitis, but the lady whose weight has caused these problems. The truth is, appendicitis can happen to anybody, but I accept that my weight causes problems during my care. The fear around sort of our size causing difficulties can make us resistant to things like mobilisation. The easy reaction to that can be that a larger person is intrinsically lazy. But it might actually be that the patient has no faith in the awareness and techniques of the staff, or that they have fears around the suitability and the weight-bearing capacity of the equipment being offered, or even that the pattern of movement that is being proposed isn't acceptable or possible for a larger person or for that person's personal abilities. Staff having the time to establish a trusting relationship and to explain that although the person is larger, it's just business as usual for them. They have the tools, they have the equipment, they have the training to handle, to rehabilitate and to help is key. It's the transaction of communication and making sure that your training isn't just a once-a-year thing, but it's embedded in the processes of everything you do in patient care. In all of my admissions, I was given a bariatric bed, which is lovely and very comfortable. I was given a bariatric chair so I could get out of bed, which helps with mobility, etc. I didn't have any equipment like walkers, etc., and none were offered. And I do wonder how they would have been obtained, etc., if they were required. As such, the person-centered ethos wasn't really embedded in my care. I was treated as a number on a scale rather than a person of size who had my own personal range of abilities and challenges. The person-centered part falls away quite quickly, I'm afraid, in difficulties. I'm very conscious that my mobility, my independence have to be worked on every day. When I'm at home, I wear my Fitbit, I keep my steps up, I do yoga, all of these things. When I was in hospital, none of that was really possible. Even a few days in bed had a really severe effect on my mobility, my confidence to move even. I do think the deterioration of ability happens faster in larger people. So it's absolutely vital that all forms of activity, independence, etc. are promoted, and promoted safely, and that means by providing the correct equipment if assistance is needed. I think pain relief was an issue. Anecdotally, it can be difficult to manage in larger people, and I was concerned at times that my pain relief was making me dizzy. Fear of falling is very debilitating. As a person of size, I'm very aware that falls damage everybody and prevention is vital, but as a larger person, the consequences of a fall are probably a lot more acute. A fall is going to have a huge effect on my life long after I'm hopefully discharged from hospital, and it's fear that stops the mobilisation frequently. You need to build confidence. So yeah, pain relief making me dizzy and the lack of supportive equipment options kind of combined to make mobilisation difficult. So yeah, I do think it had a negative effect, and that it was fairly long lasting. It probably took me a month or so after I got out of hospital to feel that I was back on the track to proper wellness. I was very keen to mobilise myself, and I was determined to move as much as was possible. I don't know how much encouragement would have been given if I wasn't so motivated. Observing like other people on the ward, I felt the staff levels weren't really sufficient they were sufficient to cover the base levels of care. I have no complaints at all, but it's that extra time to consider the individual needs of the client and to offer creative solutions to encourage patients who have difficulties either physically or kind of emotionally and with confidence. So yeah, a little extra time and awareness of equipment availability probably would have helped. I feel I had a lucky experience. When I was using the bathroom, there were safety handles, etc. Using the shower facilities, I would hope they were safely rated for a bariatric person, but I had no idea. There was a hygiene stool in the shower, but again, I couldn't see a weight limit on it, and I was very hesitant to use it. A little more support in that direction would have probably helped me feel more confident that my safety was assured. It's the feeling where you don't trust a piece of equipment is stressful. It adds incredibly to your stress, and it reduces your confidence. So that was quite a problem. I had an air mattress, so I had a bariatric bed frame with an inflatable air mattress and a pump. It was very comfortable, especially while I was mainly my recovery. I was mainly confined to bed for that portion. No specific information passed on about pressure ulcer prevention, etc. I was in intensive care for a week, and during that time I really didn't mobilise very much, and the question of pressure ulcers never came up. Now, at the start of the week, when I was really acutely ill, that didn't really occur to me, but as my recovery progressed and I got ready to leave and to step down onto an ordinary ward, obviously I had more time to think about it, and I came to the conclusion maybe that the staff didn't want to ask me about pressure damage because they didn't have the tools to deal with me if they identified a problem. It was almost a question of, well, we're too frightened to find out the answer. Now, my perception may have been incorrect, but I do know that my body mapping chart was being completed and nobody was checking my body. I only know that because of my experience in healthcare, etc. But that's quite concerning, and I was very lucky, and I recovered well and progressed well. if I'd had a setback at any time, I do wonder if I would have developed problems and how far they may have progressed before they were properly addressed. So looking back, that's quite a concern. My DVT needs were addressed when I had the operation. I was given sort of inflatable socks, and they stayed on for a couple of days once I came out, so still in intensive care. There wasn't really any discussion about them, and previously I've had a pulmonary embolism and I take warfarin, blood thinners, as a matter of course. So blood clotting is a particular concern of mine. The fear of a pulmonary embolism happening again is great in my mind. So I was grateful they were there, but there definitely was a gap when the inflatable socks were removed before I felt I was fully mobile and active again. Looking back, I wish the staff had spoken to me more about it, had explained their concerns and their aims, and I could have expressed my normal level of activity so we could come to a compromise on the best form of treatment going forward. Again, I feel lucky, but I wonder what would have happened if things hadn't gone so well. I feel lucky I recovered very well. I think the lack of communication probably causes stress, though. It just raises questions in your mind as a larger person that you wonder, are they being addressed? And even if your healthcare concerns are being addressed behind the scenes, it still helps your confidence, and optimism in recovery is a vital tool. I would have felt better about my recovery if people had addressed issues of my size more frequently. This is just a very small point, but at no point during my hospital admission was I weighed. So luckily I knew what I weighed before I was admitted, but nobody actually asked me and nobody checked. That's quite concerning. Although bigger people don't always like to be weighed, it's a vital tool in establishing the correct equipment provision, etc. So yeah, that's quite a puzzling one to me. Yes, I have noticed that things are improving generally. We still live in a society which is very judgmental to larger people. Unlike lots of other people, my condition is self-evident to everybody, and that means clinical staff with expertise, but it also means everybody who enters the ward can immediately diagnose that I'm overweight, so I feel kind of conspicuous from that point of view. The sort of issues of discrimination, I'm not sure have improved, and questions of healthcare rationing, especially during times of this pandemic, there isn't enough healthcare to go around, and questions of the moral choices that have to be made about caring for larger people and providing equipment. I have mixed feelings. Generally, it is better. The equipment availability, the strides forward in designing of equipment are amazing. That doesn't always translate to it being available at the point of need when the person is actually on the ward. And although some staff have been well trained and have the confidence to tackle issues, there are still gaps in training and gaps in awareness and sensitivity on care for larger people. And it boils down to a human rights issue. I'm entitled to the same care as everybody else, and also that's the right to dignity and discretion and privacy, etc. I'm optimistic that things will carry on improving, and obviously sessions like this hopefully will help people understand some of the issues, but I think the fight isn't won yet, and we need to carry on the hard work. The first would be equipment provision. People working with larger patients need to know what equipment is available, how to get it, and how to use it, and it has to be current. The training has to be repeated. It can't just be a one-time thing. So the right equipment in the right place, how quickly is it available, how to use it safely, would be the first one. The second one, probably flexibility of care. Every larger person is an individual. They have their own aims, their own abilities, their own challenges. Assessing those needs, and they'll change as recovery occurs, but careful assessment of the needs is essential. We're not just a number on the scale, we are individuals, and we will surprise you and cause you challenges at every step of the way, but we are individuals, so have flexibility of solution. The third one, I would say if you're caring for larger people, just check yourself occasionally. Every person eats food 3-4 times a day. Every person has their own issues with their weight and their fitness, and because this is a universal human experience, we all bring our own attitudes about weight to every single interaction. Please be aware that your life experience with food, with weight, with fitness may be different to someone else's. Try to show some compassion and a little understanding for somebody whose issues are affecting their healthcare. If you meet me for the first time as a patient and you see my size, you'll probably have a judgment of what happened to make me this size, but the simple truth is there's nothing I can do to fix it in the moment that I need your help. So just check yourself, check your attitude, just try and show a little care and compassion. Obviously it's something we all need to do every day on a daily basis, but that would be my third and my final point. Just see where you're at with your attitudes to people being overweight, and make sure you don't bring that into your professional and personal life.